city development policy and its impact on our neighborhoods and our schools. My name is Michelle Dillingam, and I'm just going to just give a few minute framing to the event this morning and then kick it over to this amazing panel that we put together for you, which includes some student speakers today as well, so I'm really excited about them. So the Cincinnati Educational Justice Coalition was convened about 6 years ago, and our primary goal was to really elevate the issue of the fact that our public schools have been consistently underfunded, under-resourced for decades, really, and it's actually increasingly gotten worse. Our work has been to call out the failure of policymakers and deep-pocketed corporate investors to address the central problem of public education, and that's a failure to invest in Black, brown, and poor children, the educators who teach them, and the communities in which they live. So that's been our work. So 3 years ago, after coming up with all these amazing things that we thought our public schools could really use, we realized that the central problem was revenue, was funding. So no matter how much art and music and cultural exposure that we want for our children, it always came down to funding. And so we launched a revenue campaign, which means we wanted to identify locally why aren't they getting the money that is supposed to get to them in their classrooms, and what can we do about it? And we educated ourselves and came upon this thing called the tax abatement. Essentially, municipalities, right, they collect taxes, and a big chunk of those taxes is supposed to go to our schools, but it doesn't always make it there, right? The money is diverted to incentivize, subsidize, development to come in, with the promise that jobs are going to be created and eventually the revenue will trickle down somehow back into our classrooms. And what we realized over time was that we were really talking about millions and millions of dollars. So we educated ourselves. And right when we started this campaign, lo and behold, a soccer stadium project became top headline. And it was this opportunity to talk about how the billionaires who owned FC Soccer were not going to pay their fair share in the form of property taxes that ends up to our schools, right? So it was a year of coalition work and building around really elevating this issue of our schools always being shortchanged, our kids getting shortchanged, while millionaires and billionaires get what they want from City Hall, right? Now, in 2019, we spent the whole year, pretty much every month, we had some sort of educational offering in the community to talk about what is a tax abatement? What is a TIF, right? How does this affect your taxes, and how does this affect our schools? And those have been really successful. People have been learning. We've been learning along the way. And here we are today. It brings us to today because there's been a lot of change recently in terms of, unfortunately, more TIFs, more TIF districts, more abatements. But I just want to end with this note in terms of framing this discussion, and that is a lot of us in this room, we're doing work around affordable housing, we're doing work on tenant rights, or maybe rent control, or maybe fair funding for our schools. And a lot of times, we'll show up maybe at City Hall or in places where these policymakers are sitting, and sometimes we're made to feel that we don't know what we're talking about, right? You just don't understand. Development is good. We must do X, Y, and Z. And we're made to feel that sometimes that we're crazy, right? Like, you walk out of some of these meetings like, am I crazy, right? It's something we call gaslighting. You might have heard the term. It's this thing where, you have a lived reality, right? You have a lived experience. And then someone makes you feel like your experience isn't real. And what I want to say today is that your experience is real. You've been seeing your neighborhoods change. You've been seeing displacement happen. You know that rents are increasingly out of control. You know that your property tax bill if you pay your full bill, is higher than wealthy people who aren't paying their full bill, right? Like, we have a lived experience that's real. So we're going to do two things today. We're going to share information, but we're also going to share the fact that we have a shared lived experience that's real. And that and then finally, we're going to talk about how we can take that reality and move it into policy change, right? Move it into action. So thanks for being here, and I'm going to move over to the laptop and do the PowerPoint. And next, I'm going to hand the mic over to Mona Jenkins.
Good morning. My name is Mona Jenkins, and I am the Director of Development and Operations for the Homeless Coalition. So, and I can actually speak from both the professional and personal position as far as how tax abatements and TIFs have affected folks in neighborhoods. So I'll talk a little bit about what's going on in Walnut Hills, what's going on also in Mount Auburn. I know a lot of folks maybe have seen the most recent incident where folks are getting pushed out of a property that is owned by a former Bengals player, bought some property and is building a hotel in Mount Auburn on Burnett Avenue, received tax abatements to build this hotel. Several months later, ended up buying a few more properties across the street, which happened to be residential buildings. And purchased one of the buildings on December 23rd, immediately served the folks with a 30-day notice, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. That's what folks received, was a notice saying that they had to move within 30 days. So they had to be out by the end of January. If you are familiar with what is already going on throughout Hamilton County, we are short units of affordable housing. In fact, we are short 40,000 units, which means for every time someone's looking at an apartment, there's probably about 6 other people looking at it as well. So what's the likeliness of you actually getting that unit?
Very, very small.
Very, very small. We are also seeing, because of development, an increase in rental prices. So the area median income right now in Hamilton County is $83,000. So what that calculates to is that a 1-bedroom, someone should pay no more than $855 for rent and utilities for a 1-bedroom. With development coming through and these developers getting tax abatements, most of those units are starting off at $1,000 just for the rent, not including the utilities. So developers are getting tax abatements, they're getting TIFs, they're getting all these public benefits, land for $1, and they are displacing folks with not a care as far as where they go, not a care as far as what happens to them. And when we explain that, look, it's going to take more than 30 days to move these folks, and a lot of the folks have special requirements, need accessibility, need our families. And that's another thing, is that a lot of these units that are coming up, they're 1-bedrooms. I don't think you can squeeze parents and children in a 1-bedroom. So that market is going, that stock of availability is also decreasing. We have to get to a point where we realize that when we're giving developers tax abatements, that we hold them accountable. That's our money that they are getting a break from. That's money that could be going towards the schools. That's money that could be going towards more affordable housing. We need to hold them accountable. So is it fair that someone just received a tax abatement but then turns around and a couple months later is displacing 3 buildings worth of folks? Some of those residents who have been living there for 30 plus years. Those folks have been a part of the community. They are assets within the community. They have connections within that community. Their resources are right there. And now when they get displaced, they're scattered. So they have to find other means of transportation. Their children have to go to different schools. And let's think about how that affects a child when all of a sudden in January or February, middle of the school year, they're moving into a new school, having to create new friends. So it takes a physical toll on folks, and it takes a mental toll. And, you know, we have an obligation to ourselves and to our fellow community members to take responsibility and say, what are we really doing with our tax dollars? You know, you don't go into a restaurant, pay for a meal, and then walk out and not eat, because you take responsibility for the money you just paid for. So in that same sentiment, we need to be mindful of how our tax dollars are being spent, where they are going, and they need to go towards affordable housing and towards our schools.
Yeah.
Woo.
Up next is Mark.
I'm gonna stand. I'm a stand talker. So my name is Mark Samaan. I'm currently employed by Cincinnati Metro as a transit route planner. My background is in city planning. And through that, things like zoning, land use, subsidies, property tax, all that good stuff that comes with that. So I'm going to talk about the first part of this, which is commercial development. So in Ohio, property is classified into either residential, meaning 1, 2, and 3 family homes, condos, etc., and commercial, which is office, retail, industrial, and apartments with 4 or more units, because that's considered a revenue-producing property, so it's taxed as
Just give it a second, it's a delay. There you go.
So it's taxed as a business. So commercial development is buildings downtown, it's commercial buildings, it's apartments, it's strip malls, it's industries, also public buildings or things with a public purpose, such as schools, hospitals, houses of worship, etc., are classified as commercial. So there are 2 main ways that cities have to subsidize development through the tax code. So that means without actually spending money from the general budget. So the first is the abatement. So abatement means that the value of the new thing that you build, or the value of the renovation that you do, or the significant rehab is untaxed. Asterisk, with an asterisk. So for anywhere from 5 to 15 years, it depends on negotiations with city council. It depends on, oh yeah, this is on low battery.
Yeah, use the other one.
Sure. Cool. Yeah, but it's all decided on by city council through the ordinance process. How much of the new value is untaxed and for how long? There's an agreement with the Cincinnati Public School District and the City of Cincinnati saying that any abatement agreement has to include a mandatory payment in lieu of taxes or pilot payments to the school district as a cash every year. And historically in Cincinnati, that percentage has been 25%. So 25% of what they don't have to pay, they have to pay to CPS. Now recently that changed to 33% as part of negotiations between the school board and the city of Cincinnati. And we'll get to that. Basically that's what an abatement is, what it refers to. The other way that they do this is through a tax increment finance district or project, or a TIF. So that is where it's different in that new value that's been created is taxed. They pay on it, but the money that is raised is diverted into a special account, a TIF account. the money in that account can only be used within the same area it was generated in. And the idea behind that is that a new project will generate revenue to pay for the infrastructure needed to build the project. So usually it's things like you build a new shopping center and you put a TIF district, and the new value pays for the parking lot, the roads in and out, the sewer connections, the utilities, and anything else like quote-unquote public costs. However, it can also be used for general construction and quote-unquote infrastructure. So sometimes it can be used for things like the actual foundations of the building, property acquisition, demolitions. So it's kind of like a very selective capital account that can only be spent in the area it was produced on projects that are in the area. CPS also gets 33% of the diverted revenue, although it used to be 27%, but it went up. So in the entire city of Cincinnati, if you look at just commercial property, it's worth $13.5 billion. So that's what the auditors values the commercial property in the city. Now, 46.6% of that, 6.3 billion, is exempt through non-municipal tax code. So that's churches, hospitals, schools, public property, parks, stadiums, and other things that have been classified as having a public purpose, and that's actually set by the state of Ohio. So the city grants those exemptions, but they actually have to because of things in the state of Ohio code. With stadiums, it gets a little different, but they get exempt. So if you remove that and you look at the things that the city controls, so the abatements and the TIFs, 1.4 billion is abated, so they don't have to pay tax on that except for the mandatory payment to CPS. And 1.6 billion is caught up in the TIF district, which means that that money is being diverted. So all commercial value, all non-residential 1, 2, and 3 family homes and condos, 21.7% is untaxed. And that's due to, I mean, we've had a lot of development in Cincinnati over the past 15, 20 years, and a lot of that doesn't pay tax.
Mark, can you stand over toward this?
So I want to just go through one big example to kind of show how this works. So there's an entire block downtown at the banks, which is where the GE Global Operations office is, and the other half is the Radius apartments at the banks, which are market rate apartments. So it's 6 different parcels is how it's classified. There's 2 office parcels, 2 apartment parcel, 2 parking, and a retail parcel, and that's just all the different uses that are in there. Thanks. So the garages, the publicly owned garage, which is the part underneath, which also serves as the foundation for the building, is a public use. So it's exempt and doesn't have to pay any taxes, which is actually good because it's owned by Hamilton County, so Hamilton County doesn't have to pay tax to itself. But the rest of the project cannot happen without that foundation podium at the banks, because that's what gives it, that's what allows them to build the tower and keep it out of the floodplain. There's a smaller garage that's with the apartments, that's private, but that is all abated or caught up in a TIF district. So none of it is actually going to general tax levies. It's being diverted with the mandatory payment to CPS. The main office is worth almost $76 million. That's the actual GE office building. So 73 million of it is tax exempt. It's only paying the mandatory payment to CPS under the old percentage of 25%. The rest of it is caught up in the TIF. There's a secondary office, same situation, but it's worth less. But it has the same kind of abatement and TIF breakdown. And lastly, the apartments themselves are worth $50 million. 46 million is untaxed. The rest is diverted. The retail there, which is, I think there's like a restaurant in there, is worth 5 million. It's also untaxed. These are all for the max amount of 15 years. So that whole block is worth $160 million, and it was 2 phases, the office and the apartment with the garage underneath. So 125 million of it is abated, It's not taxed, except for the mandatory payment. The TIF value, and that grows every year because as properties increase in value over time, that will be diverted as well into the TIF district. And then finally, the garage is exempt. So the $160 million building, according to the tax code, is worth $0. So they only get, CPS gets its 25% cut from the abatements and 27% from the TIFs, because this was done before the new development agreement, which raised it to 33%. So that's how it works. That's the largest example of like a single block that's currently on the books, but there are similarly sized developments, and also many, many more much smaller developments that have this kind of structure. Because if you're developing anywhere in the city of Cincinnati, you qualify assuming that you meet certain spending amounts. Like you have to spend at least $5,000 to qualify for an abatement. So the new agreement we have, 33% is the new payment amount. And that's a number that was calculated by CPS as how much they need to make to be held harmless by these numbers. Now they can always get more money out of properties as they rise in value, but in this way it's locked for the 15 years. So that agreement's in effect until 2025. Council typically chooses to grant abatements or create TIF districts through emergency ordinance, which is when it just has to be read once in council and then can be voted on. It doesn't have to go through 3 readings because there's no definition for what an emergency is. So it's anything that 7 council members think is an emergency. And lastly, residential stuff, which I did not touch on, but Andrew will be talking about next, do not have to pay that pilot agreement to CPS. So that's how commercial abatements and TIFs work. Quite a bit of our property values are untaxed, and Andrew will take it away with residential.
First off, just a big shout out to Mark. All these visualizations that are about to come up were made by him.
Andrew, could you ask the person operating the PowerPoint to move it up a little higher on the screen so we can see the numbers at the bottom? Oh, there you go, Michelle.
I don't know if I know how to do that because it's not under my control.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Luckily, I think stuff that's coming up maybe won't fall under that, so I think we'll be all right. So I just want to start this off.
Use the microphone, Andrew.
Sorry. Who here has faced an eviction notice? Yeah? Yeah? Sucks, right? So a big part of this is, as we develop in Cincinnati, we have this big narrative of who are we developing for? Because it's not me, it's not a lot of people in this room, it's for people who can afford it. And frankly, I strictly can't afford anything downtown right now. Uh-oh.
Sorry.
That's all right. Yeah?
Oh, there it goes.
Great. All right.
I don't know what I did, but.
So we're sitting at this point right now in which only half of downtown is able to be taxed. We're sitting in an area where only 43% of Over the Rhine can be taxed right now. If you know anything about development, you know that downtown and Over the Rhine are 2 of our most developed areas in the entire county. We know that we're having large multi-million-dollar projects in the entire area. You look at these areas that have maxable tax stuff, you're looking at places that aren't being developed in these massive areas. You're showing that these areas that strictly aren't being as developed are paying the burden of all the taxes.
Did it go?
Nope.
Okay. If anybody's really good at PowerPoint, I can use your help.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. So the reason that you see this map flip right now is because you see that tax abatements and TIF districts in these areas that are being developed aren't paying their fair share of taxes. And so when you flip over to there we go. So you see that the value for these areas that are being massively developed are the ones that have these huge abatement values. And we have this scale right now in Cincinnati in which it doesn't matter what you're building, you as a developer are incentivized to build things as big and shiny, as expensive as you want, because you won't pay a single dime on it. People like us are gonna pay the cash on this. We're the ones that abate all of these things. We're the ones that end up picking up the slack on taxes for these large commercial properties and these residential properties that aren't paying their fair share of taxes, especially Cincinnati public schools. So looking at just projects in 2018 alone, you can see these massive projects like Great American, who's only paying this much in millions to CPS, but this is the revenue they generated for it, tax evade property. Look at all of these things down the line that are making these massive amounts of revenue but aren't giving their fair share of taxes to public schools. And this doesn't get any better when you look at residential districts. One back. One back. Backwards. There we go. I mean, look at downtown and over the Rhine, right? Like, these are two massively developed areas that aren't paying their fair share of things. And there's this big notion, I'm glad that you talked about the fact that we don't have enough affordable housing, because we just don't have enough housing in general. There's a notion that if we just keep building things, eventually rent will go down. I hear that from everyone on every side. I see that we get more apartments, more multifamily buildings, eventually rent will go down. If I'm a landlord, I don't care how many apartments have been built. If I'm a landlord that's just built an abated property downtown, I'm still gonna charge you $1,000 in rent. My rent today, I learned, is going up from $900 to $1,500. No changes on my building, no changes in my neighborhood, no mass development, but they know they can up the rent on me. And developers all around Cincinnati absolutely know this. We're at a fact where we can build whatever we want, but your landlord does not care about the fact that there's plenty of housing around, because they know they can charge you whatever they want for that property. Oh, thank you. So, what can you do? One of the biggest things you can do is organize. My good friends at Cincinnati Tenants Union back there. It is extremely hard in this day and age to have any leg up against a landlord. We can try to put Band-Aids on this. We can try to put a Band-Aid about the idea of there's new ways you can pay your security deposit. There's new ways you can get past certain ways of rent. But the best thing you can do is organize with other tenants. We're facing an area in which landlords aren't giving you back your security deposit. They aren't making a safe environment to live in. They are increasing your rent. They're going to do everything they can to push you out for the next highest bidder. So you absolutely should organize people in your building, people in your neighborhood. How many people here have got their security deposit backs on every single apartment they've owned? Or rent that? Yeah? Laughable, right? Oh, you have? Well, that's incredible. I have faced 3 different eviction notices, and I have got maybe $200 total back out of all of my security deposits I've ever gotten back. $200 charged for, the apartment was worth $1,400. I was charged $800 for carpet cleaning. People, my apartment didn't have carpets. Like, I don't know what's going on here. $200 back that I had to split between 4 people in a crappy Clifton house. And so one of the things the Cincinnati Tenants Union is doing right now is deposit retrieval, in which they'll go out and help you fix up your place. That way you can at least get some semblance of the security deposit back, because God knows that your landlord doesn't care about how much effort and time you put into this. They're going to try to rob you of every single dime that you have in this event. So who are we developing for? 2002, Over the Rhine had 3,000 apartments that were affordable for lowest income residents. Right now, there's only 800 such apartments. Honestly, that number is even surprising to me, because my rent goes up almost every single time. I haven't found someone yet who's paying anything less than $700 right now for a shoebox. But more than 4 in 10 residents of the West End are at risk of losing their homes due to rising rents and real estate costs pushed up by development in areas like the FC Cincinnati Stadium. And this is only getting worse and worse as we extremely develop more parts of it, and there's parts of the FC Stadium that we haven't even factored in yet. We're factoring in things like parking lots and all the new mass development that's going to happen post that. Between the years of 2000 and 2014, Cincinnati lost over 12,000 housing units with rent under $750 a month. Many are replaced with housing units starting at $1,200 a month. That's only going to keep going up. The way that we define affordable housing is not a way that is actually affordable for the average Cincinnatian. We have over 300,000 people in Cincinnati right now. And when we talk about affordable housing and we talk about new development in areas that people can actually live in, we're really only talking about the top 10%. We're talking about people that can afford these new apartments downtown, these apartments that we can afford in Clifton. But right now, we have people sleeping on the streets because they can't afford any kind of semblance of housing right now. So the average income in Cincinnati is $38K a year. That number kind of fluctuates, that's a slightly older number. But my neighborhood's average income is $23K a year. Average rent in my neighborhood is $900 a month, and that's steadily increasing. I learned today that my rent's gonna increase. My rent's gonna increase next year. I have been very fortunate to meet the last 3 people that have lived in my unit, and every single one of them said they were paying less than me. And I've asked them, has there been any changes to the unit? None whatsoever. The building has changed owners. The building has seen slight improvements to the lawn, but nothing to the units. I barely have running like hot water in my apartment right now. My lights like barely ever work, and I've asked for mass amounts of just like, can you help me make this place a place I can actually live and thrive in? And I've gotten pretty steadfast, I'm not gonna fix that. So one of the biggest things we can do is rent control. There's a lot of talk about how we should or shouldn't do this and the loopholes around it, but the fact remains is that we need to enforce some kind of way of rent caps within the city of Cincinnati that means that we can all actually afford our housing. It means that my landlord can't just jump up my rent $600 over nothing, over no new developments, over no new improvements, just because they realize that my neighborhood's the new up-and-coming thing, and so people can afford to live there because they're willing to pay more. We need to find a way to enforce the fact that developers and landlords shouldn't be able to raise your rent just because they can. Because God knows with TIFs and tax abatements, there is no fiscal reason for them to do it other than the fact that they know they can charge you more money for this right now.
That is going over to...
All right, whoa, this is really loud because I turned it up for Andrew. We're gonna have Andrea come up from Woodward. So, look, it's really a challenge to distill all this really complicated tax, abatement, subsidy information, but we gave it a go and we have a lot more information. But what is probably most important is to really have you and the people watching and our elected officials who make these policies hear from the people who are the most directly impacted by these decisions, right? So I'm gonna turn this mic down, but for now hold it kind of far away, and here you go, Andrea.
Do you care if I invite my students up?
Yeah.
Because this is why I do this. Can those on the panel, are they sitting, standing?
Hey, come on up.
Hi, thank you so much for coming out. Again, my name is Andrea Spenny. I am an educator, English, this year 10th and 11th grade English teacher at Woodward Career Technical High School. This is my 5th year there. These are some of my lovely, lovely students. Thank you. It's just an honor to be here today, to have you guys here today, to have them next to me. Because again, I don't do this for me. This is not any type of self-serving, and that's why I always like to have them beside me, with me, when we do events like this. Just to kind of give a very quick, and then I'm going to pass the mic to them, of why we're here today. We shouldn't have to be here today. I shouldn't have to be here, they shouldn't have to be here, none of us should have to be here if our city truly cared about every single individual and cared about equity, right? However, we're all here because we do care about these issues, and we care about holding people in positions of power to caring about everyone. So at the end of last school year, some of my students, I don't even remember what the assignment was, something with argumentative writing, and we came across CPS's proposed fiscal budget for this school year. If you've never looked at CPS's budget, you should. Again, very kind of unsurprisingly surprised when I saw it, looking at kind of where the breakdown is, but then looking at the line items that are very general and what is this money actually being spent on. So of course, I shared that with my students. they had the same feelings that I did because they're the students, right? It only impacts me to a certain extent as their teacher, but very, very frustrated with, hey, we're a student and we know this initiative in our building or in our district isn't working for us and most students within the district, so why are we pouring $44,000 into this, or kind of whatever that line item was. So I kind of got some of their feedback, shared it at a board meeting, was met with, in my opinion, and I'm unapologetic about it, a lot of animosity and a lot of defensiveness within or from some of our board members. I was told, oh, what you should do is bring them to a meeting so we can hear from them directly. And again, I think it was meant with well intentions, but in my mind, I'm thinking, are you paying for their transportation? Are you paying for their dinner? Are you making sure they get down there safe? Are you making sure they get home at 9 o'clock safe? And again, it's a lot of those things that people outside of the classroom and outside of schools don't necessarily always pay attention to. So I shared this with the students the next day, showed them the board meeting video, very frustrated with a lot of our board members' reactions. So they said, no, we're going on Monday. So this happened on a Thursday. Monday was the next board meeting. We packed a Metro bus, got them pizza after school, rode down to the board, showed up with almost 20 students. We all signed up to have our 3 minutes of talk. And from that, just a lot of, oh wow, why are they saying this? Why are they putting this out there? And just a lot of people, as we all know, when you try to make change or try to ask questions about money, a lot of backlash and a lot of trying to keep us quiet. And that's not going to happen. So this group of students this year has kind of continued that momentum, doing amazing, amazing things. I have a partnership with Miami University's Urban Cohort. So these students have been participating in youth participatory action research in my classroom in the community all school year, and this is kind of a culmination of why they're here today. So if you guys, did you have a specific prompt for them, or? Yeah. Okay, all right.
They can come sit down right here.
They
have
can
to sit up
sit.
here. Yeah.
Okay, I can see. Okay. Thank you.
Just generally, what we ask these students from CPS High School to do is to just speak of their lived experience in the classroom with this framework around resources, right? Because you just saw some slides about billions of dollars
Of tax dollars not making it to our classrooms. And these kids are in our classrooms. So we want to hear from them. We need to get another microphone now. I want to make sure their voices are heard. Okay, let's try.
All right, so here we go. Who wants to get started? All right, thank you. And just say your name too.
My name is Tamisha. I go to Woodward. I've been in CPS my whole life. So like I basically know like what's going on with the school. My main problem with the school and us not having enough funding is that we don't have any counselors. I mean, we have people who will fill in as counselors, but we don't have no actual counselors. And as a team, especially a team who is in a CPS school, we see a lot of things that we should not be seeing. And it's people that we can't go talk to. Like, I can't go talk to my mom. So like sometimes I would want to go talk to a counselor, but like let them know what's going on with me as a person, but I can't because we don't have enough funding to even put a person in that type of place. And thank you. And it really frustrates me because teens, I'm a depressed teen. Like I've been in depression a long time. So like I can't go talk to nobody and I can't break my feelings down because we get when we don't have enough money for this or we don't have enough money for that. So go talk to a teacher or something. Go talk to your mom or something. But like I can't because there's certain stuff that I don't want to tell my mom. And it like when I was at Rothenberg, a CPS school. I didn't have these problems because we had the money. Like I was in preschool, kindergarten, we had the money. But then as time progressed, I seen that people who were there weren't there no more. And I used to wonder why they're not here no more. And it was because they didn't have enough money to pay them anymore. So they had to leave because they weren't getting paid the proper amount. So people who were there who were helping us, everyone, weren't there the next day. And that's just, it hurts. Like, we can't go talk to nobody no more because they don't have no money for us to talk to. And it shouldn't even be about the money, but that's a sad thing, and it is. So that's why I feel like we we just need to fund our schools because it's kids out here that the kids are the future, especially in Cincinnati. So without the proper funding, it won't be a proper world. It won't be, the future won't be right without the school system that we need. I hope
Hi, my name is Jamaya. I have been in a CPS school when I was little, but after that I moved and I came back and I've been in the CPS school since last year. I'm a 10th grader as well. With CPS school, as Tamisha said, some things aren't funded as it used to be. Recently, I would go talk to somebody and they told me the fact that they had to rise up to take these positions to be helping students like me, like Tamisha, who seen things, who went through things, but have nobody to talk to. And I feel like these schools, the reason why they don't want to fund these certain things is because once the public starts to notice the fact that these things aren't right and they start to try to make a change, they feel threatened the way like, we're doing our jobs, we don't want to get paid less. Because when I want to believe that certain people in positions in power is being paid so much for so little, and when people who actually is working with these students, with these teachers, they're not getting much money or credit, and they is trying to fund things that are not needed to be funded. Okay. But it is nice to know the fact of there are people who, like Miss Spenny, who are teachers and who try to help us make a change. I'm pretty sure it's not going to happen in next year, probably next 10 years. But if we slowly get the public to notice, the students to notice, more teachers to notice, I'm pretty sure these people in positions of power will actually start listening to us and actually giving us the money that we need.
All right.
Hello, my name is Parashay, and I go to Woodward right now. And I've been at CPS schools all my life. I started off at Pleasant Hill, and we really didn't have a lot of stuff there, like growing up. Like K through 6, we didn't have a lot of teachers and stuff, like supplies. We were running out of books and stuff. And like, we went, I don't know, like, other schools we go to, like, they have all this stuff, and then we don't have nothing. Like, we don't learn at their level. We have kids that go through problems, but they don't want to hear it. They say we're too young to understand this stuff. But I feel like the younger we are, they should really like listen and stuff, because we know this stuff. We go to this school. And then like, when I was in 7th and 8th grade, I was depressed because it was certain things, like it was a struggle being an athlete and attending school, and then things at home, and I didn't have nobody to talk to. And like when I go to a counselor, they say she can't see me because it's only one of her. So then I have to wait. And then when I do talk, it's just like, it's nothing happening. Like, we need to make a change in our schools. We need more counselors, we need more books, we need everything. And they just keep handing us tests and stuff, wasting money on them, instead of actually going to the school and looking at us, like actually paying attention to us and how we feel and stuff. And I get scared. It's just like, it hurts knowing that a lot of kids don't have somebody to talk to, and they carry all that weight on their shoulders.
My name is Ronald White. I attend Woodward, and I would say my experience at Woodward would be, it's not the best experience. I feel as if the people in power at our school aren't taking precautions and things to do what they have to do, and they're not taking heed to what we're saying. Like, so, for example, we had a survey. We created a survey with YPAR, and on this survey, we surveyed students 7th through 12th grade, and we were asking them questions about home life. What do you plan to do after school? Do you plan to go to college and things like that? And a lot of them were pretty stable with their answers, and they were like, well, they cared. It's just that, like, the people, we shouldn't be having to ask for counselors. We shouldn't be having to ask for money to get funded for different things. We should not be asking, like, we shouldn't be getting tests almost every quarter that costs $2 and $3 million and stuff, when you can be putting this stuff toward building homes, building new schools, and then half the money that's supposed to be half the money that's supposed to be given to us is given to, like, you see bars after bars after bars popping up downtown. You see soccer stadiums popping up, and you just, like, the gardens, they could have did something to that. They could have made it a high school arena for playing games. You don't see, like, schools getting, well, I'm an athlete, so, like, Schroeder has to come over and use our track, and, like, they shouldn't have to do that. You should be funding these schools and giving them the resources that they need to be better. And I feel as if they aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, and we need to make a change in our community.
And one more thing, because of what Ronald was saying, I feel like not even just public schools, the people in power public schools, I mean anybody in Cincinnati with power, I feel like they just put their money towards what they think sounds good, not what is good for the community, not what's good for the people here. Like, what I'm fighting for study hall. I feel as if we should put money into study hall instead of putting money into this thing called advisory. It sounds good, but it's not. All we do is sit there. We sit there and we play on our phone or we get on the computer. We cannot do no makeup work. In my class, if we do makeup work, she would say -10, like -10 off my grade. I feel like that's stupid, but I can't. I've had a petition go around, and my petition got shut down. The principal looked me in my eyes and said, well, what about the bad kids? It's not what about the bad kids. We need to try to put something for everybody, not just they put so much focus onto the 10 kids that don't care. Okay, put the focus to the rest of the school. It's 90% of schools who is fighting for what I'm fighting for.
I also want to piggyback on what Ronald said about pointless money. There's also children who's being kicked out of their houses because of certain things their parents is going through, and this money that was getting children that's not having home, they could just do it a school dormitory, have it for free, have something for these kids that actually go home to do something instead of one day growing up still living on the streets but making things that seem like Cincinnati is worse. It's not. It's how the system is being played and making it look like it's worse. If they were to put their money into something that is actually beneficial towards us and actually can help us towards getting these great things, like we could afford $12,000 homes if we were able to have these homes when we was little, grow up, get a job, have these fantastic jobs, get this money, and make the city better.
Listen, I think these ladies and gentlemen could just do the whole event. Just with them, we might have to talk about that. But we want to move on. Thank you, students. Thank you. All right, Kira. We're going to bring up Kira, who is also a CPS teacher. Thank you, Kira.
All right, I truly am inspired, and I want you all to know, Woodward students, that one, I needed to hear you, because I want you to know, even though I don't work at Woodward, You are my babies because, you know, as a teacher of CPS, there are lots of us who hear you, we see you, and just because you're not at my school, your fellow peers have the same struggles as you and are saying the same things, and so I'm inspired to know that you guys are 10th and 11th graders. That means you guys are going to be voting very, very soon. And so I'm inspired to know that as a soon-to-be old person, y'all are going to take care of us. You're going to fix some of the stuff we have messed up. So my name is Camara, and I am an educator with CPS schools. And as a teacher, I am more about let's prove my point, okay? So we're gonna play a little game real quick, all right? So I'm gonna be a 1, and you remember the count off, remember? No, I know it's been a little while for school for some of us, but we're gonna play the count off where I'll count, I'm a 1, 2.
1. Oh, 3.
We're going to 4, I'm sorry. See, bad instruction. Ready? We're going to 4. 1, 2,
3.
4. 1,
2, 3.
4.
1,
2, 3.
4.
1, 2,
4.
2. And then I'm gonna do a really bad job. You're doing great. 3.
4.
1, 2, 3.
1.
2.
3.
Going back to this back line. Yes.
4.
All right.
1, 2,
3,
4. 1,
1.
2,
3.
4.
1. 2.
3,
4. 1. 2.
3, 4.
1.
1,
All right. You guys are amazing. Now, it's going to be difficult for some of you who are without a seat, okay? But if you are a 1, just for a moment, please stand up. 1s only. Those of us who are 1s. If you were a 1, please stand up. And I want everyone to look around because nationally, 1 in every 4 children are in poverty. Okay? So this right now, and I love how beautifully diverse this room is because this is our country right now. Don't sit down once, I'm so sorry. If you're a 2, please stand up. If you're a 2, please stand up. This is Cincinnati. Did you see the problem there? And thank you. Have a seat. Now, 2s, technically I was supposed to, because I heard someone go, wait, that's 50%. No, I can't cut you in half, and because we're people, and that's just I can't do that. But I wanted you to be able to see the number went up for our city. When an earlier speaker asked, who's ever been evicted? That resonated with way too many people in the room. When you heard each speaker speak, when they talked about homeless, from up here, I could see heads go, yeah. When you had someone up here say rent increase, heads in the audience were like, yeah. When students were speaking, they talked about not just academics, but the fact that all of the things in their communities that are happening that affect, they didn't talk about, oh, there are kids in my classroom who can't add. There are kids in my classroom who can't, read. That's not what's bothering them. It's how all of these other systems keep pressing in harder and harder and harder to our classrooms and to our students And there are studies and people out there in power who have the money to do their own research and have the money to put information out there that will tell you money doesn't really matter to schools. And so I hear people like, that's funny. Okay? It's real. There are people out there that will ignore the fact that there are study after study after study that show that when states and cities take their money and put it in the number ones and the number twos that were just standing in those communities, that their achievement gaps have actually gone down. They ignore those statistics. There are people that will ignore the fact that even though there is lots of legislation that is being passed to say enough is enough, and we need to not just have equitable, but adequate funding. And as the students in their way said, it's not just to have adequate and equitable funding, but when you get it, use it correctly once you have it. There are plenty of people that are going to say that, actually, it's about accountability. If your teachers were better teachers, if your students were just better students, if those principals were better, then our states and our schools would be better. But you just heard from kids who said the way that systems know how to hold people accountable is to give them more what? Tasks, right? Isn't that what you guys said? And I know I'm always giving you guys tests. Your poor teacher back there, she's right now probably writing you another test. Because what we're told is you have to give these tests. Because those systems with power are trying to distract. Because if we make it about accountability for your teachers, or accountability, the parents just, and see their test scores, it's that. That's a distraction method. Because what they're hoping is you won't figure out that they're defunding your schools. And then it comes back around and says, but it's also your fault. Okay? Because if I was a better test giver and you were a better test taker, I don't think that's a word, then you would have more money and things would be better and everything would be fine, right? That's a distraction method. And all of the people who came before me and had great statistics about what is really happening to the money, as a teacher, I want you to make sure you know what the trickle down of that is. That means that right now, this is probably the most space these students have gotten, because in their classrooms, what's your average class size?
My biggest class size, I want to say, is about 21.
Oh, that's good. My biggest class is 34 kids. Oh yeah. So imagine this room trying to teach everyone in this room. Okay?
Well, back in my days, I had 43 in my class when I was a student.
Right.
There wasn't much attention.
It wasn't much attention. And that's a problem. But because you can't then come back and say, well, why aren't they learning? Right? So that trickling down effect means we don't have the resources that students are calling out for. The majority of my students, I spend my day as a special education teacher doing social emotional learning. I have to spend more time as a counselor and as a social worker than I do focusing on academics, because they're couch surfing right now. They're being evicted. You know what couch surfing is? All right. Do you know my classroom is also a classroom that the kids call it a safe space. So my couch surfers know that their world is in their backpack, because each day they go and stay in a different place, because there is either no home or not a safe home. So they know they can keep clean clothes and whatever the world that is precious in that backpack, and it will be kept safe for them. So there's that part of our world as teachers. There's the, you need to be accountable, you need to be better, you need to make sure kids are getting all of the standards that they need. There is the reality of the social emotional, you guys said it best, of what they truly need because of all of the society that is happening. But then there's this other piece of when you look at Cincinnati as a whole. If we were to take a map, and I had the pleasure of sitting with teachers and we were shown a map of the city. And if you do a scatter plot of where some of the wealthiest positions and jobs are, and then overlap them where brown, black, and poor people live in our city, guess what? It's the same scatter plot. But the question becomes, why is it that our schools and our communities have all of this wealth around them, but not access to it? Why is it that our kids can walk past these companies, but not be employed by these companies? Part of the problem, and one thing that we will continue, and as long as I can, I will voice that we have to look at the long run. It is not fair for these companies and these businesses to come into our communities, but not be willing, they're willing to not pay their fair share. Our speakers have shown a beautiful job of saying that. But there's more than just the taxes in the sense of just the physical money, because the bigger part of it is, we were talking a minute ago and I said, you know, it's kind of like that show, The Lion King. Nod your head that you know what I'm talking about. The movie, you've got a lion, you're on the Sahara, you've got zebras and hyenas and all of these animals living in this one place. And when you lost pieces, the whole community dies. There's no food, there's no clean water. Everyone suffers. Even the people in control eventually realize they suffer. So these people in power, no one is going to say it's a bad thing to bring jobs and companies to Cincinnati. That's not what we're saying here. What we're saying is two things. If you come, pay your part. And once you're here, reinvest in the schools and put our children in those jobs that are no longer just minimum wage jobs, but will get them out of being in poverty. Because right now, when you look at the output across our city of where do students end up, it is, yes, they're graduating, but the opportunity to move themselves and their families out of poverty isn't there right now. So that circle of life, we're broken somewhere. So I'm gonna stop. But I just hope to leave you with, you've heard from a lot of different angles how this is all interconnected. And as a teacher, I just hope that instead of continuing to hold our children and teachers accountable, that we begin to hold more and more the people with power in and outside of our schools and cities and businesses accountable, because we can no longer function as if we are separated. Thank you for your time.
Hello? Okay. My name is Marche Gendrew. I'm going to be talking about the action steps and what we can do to move forward. I'm currently an intern under Michelle at CFT, and so I'm definitely moved by what the kids were saying today. I've been in this line of work and working with kids for over 10 years and as a direct service provider. So a lot of the stories that they were telling you today, I'm on that receiving end, listening to kids, listening to parents who's been evicted from their homes, and me having to be the person to find homes for these people to live. And like everyone was saying, it's very difficult to find housing in a city where there's no housing available. So imagine us providers trying to find housing, and again, there's no access to that. The kids were touching on a lot about mental health. That's a big issue in our schools right now. A lot of kids aren't able to function because of the things that they deal with on a daily basis. You know, she mentioned that she was depressed, and I applaud you for being honest about that. A lot of our students aren't being honest about, or don't have the spaces rather to talk about their mental health issues in the communities, in their homes, and even at schools. So thank you again for being honest about that. A lot of the money that we do not have in our schools, we need to fund our schools, and we need to fund social workers to assist our students. As Kiera was saying, you know, she spends a lot of time being a social worker versus teaching. Like, how can she be a teacher and do her job when she's having to deal with kids who are depressed, who's getting kicked out of their homes, who don't have places to stay, don't have food on the table. You know, they go to school, they're hungry, they don't have food, so that's something that they have to deal with. So what can we do? You know, we need more people involved in our children's lives, and we need to take a stance on doing that. Part of what we can do in taking a stance in that, if you can look up here, we have a change.org. It's a petition that we want everybody to sign, so if you can whip out your phones really quickly.
I already looked for it. It's not coming up under change.org with that headline.
Okay, well, we'll figure that part out. But this is one of the ways that we can start making the change just by in our hands with our cell phones, is signing this petition. This petition talks about everything we talked about today about tax abatements, tips, and how that impacts our schools. And we, like we've all been saying, we need to keep our politicians as well as our city leaders accountable for making these policies that are not for our students. And one of the things that I've noticed too in this work, I've realized that in CPS, it's 64% African American students compared to 24% white students. That's a problem. That is a huge problem. So we need to, especially in our Black communities, we need to be involved with our city policies. We need to be at these events. We need to talk to our cousins, our families. We need to have these discussions in our homes so that we can show up in numbers, so that we can talk to our politicians. We can send our politicians emails. We can send them we can send them letters, we can write them, we can show up to City Hall, we can show up to these public meetings so that we can uplift our voices for our students and our teachers, but most importantly, within our communities. Another way that we can also call to action and change action, there is a website and it's a texting service. It's called ResistBot. And we'll have handouts for you guys so you guys will know exactly what to do and how to do that. But essentially, ResistBot is a texting and Facebook messaging where you can text your local politicians and your state politicians, and you can send them information about what you're approving as far as education policies, any type of policies that's dealing with kids, or anything that you can think of that that would be of help in terms of sending out information to the local politicians. Another one is called 5 Calls. 5 Calls, essentially, it tells you all about policies that's impacting the state. And you can read about all the policies, and when you're doing that, you can then send that information to ResistBot to then shoot it to your state representatives. So we're asking everybody to please come out to these events more. We're definitely going to be sending out information. We have lots of handouts in the back, so please take those handouts. And so we're going to be asking questions now from our audience. We also have little notepads in case people are uncomfortable with speaking on the mic, to write those questions down. And what we're going to do is take those questions back to our politicians, and we're going to ask them to answer those questions for us. So the Cincinnati Education Justice Coalition, they meet every second Thursdays, and the location, it will be depending, it just kind of depends. We are all over, but the goal is we're trying to get in all the communities. I want to get into some schools. I want to get into parents' houses. So we're going to stretch this whole organization so that we can touch everybody, okay? So this is a big movement. And we want everybody to be on board about this because there's an election coming up soon, right? And this stuff needs to be talked about, and we need our politicians that's going to be into these new offices to understand how this is impacting our schools. So this is now a good time for us to man our power up, get up to the state, Columbus. We have something coming up on Wednesday. The rally coming up on Wednesday, and we'll have Michelle talk to you guys about that.
Just real quick, there's a handout on the table. There's a statewide rally for public education. We want to thank the Cincinnati Federation of Teachers for helping host 3 big buses to get us up there. We have some serious threats in the form of voucher expansion and just all of this that we're talking about. Public education statewide is under attack, and we urge you to get on the bus with us to go up to Columbus. So we left some time at the end of this to just do an open mic. We want people to feel like you're a part of this session, and Mona has something else to add, so we'll go from there.
Okay. I just want to make a quick call to action for affordable housing. We, the Homeless Coalition, and other folks are working on getting a ballot initiative to put pressure, create this charter to have the Affordable Housing Trust Fund funded. So last year we got the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Now we need to make sure it gets funded. So if the city has money to give to developers, it should have money to give to affordable housing. So I have some flyers. We are looking for folks to assist us with getting signatures for this ballot. So I have some forms. If you want to sign up, you're interested in collecting signatures. If you want to plug in, sign up, and we will keep you posted. So that is the one thing, that my call to action.
You want to moderate if people want to?
Oh.
Okay, so do we have any questions in the audience? Any burning questions for the panel that's been up here?
Well, I'd just like to make 2 comments. I was gentrified out of Walnut Hills. Developer came in from Denver, didn't look like he was 30 years old, bought 3 buildings right next to each other. Within 8 months, he had over a dozen in the area, and then the city approved the Airbnb, and with 23 units in our building, there were 15 evictions. So anyways, when I was out in Walnut Hills, Frederick Douglass, they haven't had a children's library for I think about 7 years now. Right now there's a group that's doing online donations to get the library back up. It was being used as a detention center. While the school turned around and had a big exposure about getting a big dance program in there instead. So talk about funds there. Okay, the other thing going on is regarding the housing. The Community Reinvestment Act is being proposed to be changed. It was created in the 1970s so low to moderate income people could get access to loans. With the current administration, the Office of Comptroller of Currency and the FDIC want to change it so the bank's ratings are no longer based on how many people are served in a community, but how many dollars were spent in the community, and it will be opening it up to infrastructure. Roads, buildings, prisons. So we need people to write a letter or sign the letter I've got to tell them that we don't want this to go through, and we've only got 1 month to do it.
Thank you so much for that. Anybody else with a question? Yep.
Hello, I'm nice to meet all of you here, and I'm a person that usually likes to go out for walks and all that stuff, and I usually talk to a lot of people just to see how they're doing, hey, hello, and all that stuff, and I noticed out there there's a lot of homeless people. There's a lot of people that's just in disparity about just money issues, and that's a very huge concern for me because I was raised to be money isn't everything. You can get through it all together, and as going through life and all that stuff, I'm kind of seeing how most of the time that's not the case. Sad as it is, money is everything. You can't always solve your issues together because at the end money's just everything, and as a person that doesn't want to be like that, that's kind of hurtful as you just go around and everything has a price tag. No one is really has a good case or defense against the truth that is just cash is the lifeblood of our world and what it does to us in the end. It's really difficult speak of this in a way that makes it so that it makes sense coming out my mouth. And it's really just hurtful to see all the homeless, all the people who can't deal with themselves and thanks. Alright, and it's really just to see how much us as a people are worth, and especially doing it for me as a black male, I'm worth more as a prisoner than as a student. That was a huge kick in the shins when I found that out. Each student's mostly worth 10,000, and that's go towards their schooling, any programs they may want to follow, any places they might go in the future. And how come I'm only 10,000 and a prisoner is 250,000? That's an example for 2017. That was kind of wild just to find out just out of the blue.
It costs the state of Ohio $45,000 a year to house a prisoner.
That's a lot of money.
It is.
Oh, okay. My name's Martha Stevens. Oh, here I am, an old lady, and I've been on a hell of a lot of marches and all kind of activities through my life here in Cincinnati. You can probably tell I didn't grow up here. I'm from Georgia, but I've lived here for 50 years. I tell you, I don't think the ruling class cares whether we live or die. Common people, I don't think they care. I mean, in fact, why not just get rid of people? In a sense, that's what they're doing. So, I mean, people not without a place to live, no hope of a place to live for many people. 28,000 homeless in this city alone. So, I tell you what I would like to see, and I would certainly like to participate in it. I would try to walk it again. A great march against poverty. We should, a huge march. They hear that. I mean, they may not look at their emails. They may pay much attention to their phone calls. They would hear that. A huge rally and march. I don't mean 100 people, I mean thousands and thousands of people, if we could ever bring that about. So anyway, I hope some people will think about it.
I think she just covered what I was going to say, but we wouldn't have a problem if we had 3,000 people showing up for a meeting like this instead of this simple 300 people that are here today. And anyway, she mentioning scooping people up. From what I've seen in news, 40 years in the past, people make excellent soil and green.
Thank you.
So my question is more for the panel. I'm just curious as to like how the people who are being represented here today think that we should approach the people in power currently, like the city council and the people in local government, about how they don't really see what's going on here as a problem and are taking advantage of it more so than they would be looking to fix the problems we're seeing in our community. Opening it up.
I'm just going to jump in because what we're talking about is some simple legislative policy fixes. It doesn't take a ballot initiative, it doesn't take a new election. The people at City Hall right now could make changes to our tax abatement policies to build in more accountability, transparency, and fairness to the process. And many organizations have been convening for months to give City Council policy recommendations on how to improve our subsidy programs. So the information's there. It is a lack of political will. So how do you change political will? From the people, right? Voters. Voters need to say, we want to see this stuff addressed. So the petition, can't see it very well. We'll email it out to all of you. It'll be on social media. But this simple petition just says, City Council and Board of Education, we want to see some reforms in how we give out public money. Okay, so that's a start, and I'll just leave it at that.
Hi everyone, I'm Natasha. To address the gentleman that just spoke, I believe one way we can address that is by becoming the politicians. We're asking, we're not getting the answers we're looking for, so now it's time for us to tighten our boots up and we become those politicians and make the correct decisions. The purpose I got up is because I want to thank the high school students that came up here. I don't know if anyone was paying attention. I was off in the corner and I was in tears. I was literally crying. The young lady in a pink jacket, what's your name? Tamisha, when you spoke volumes to my soul. I saw myself in you when you spoke up here. What I want to tell you is that I admire you to get in front of this group of people and to be vulnerable and say you was depressed. Because I went through that when I was a teenager. I was a teenage mom and I was very depressed, not only in my school setting, but in my home setting too. And I want you to know that your self-care, your psychological state is what's most important. Before you can fight any of this fight, you gotta be strong enough. So I want you to work on that, okay? And the other lady that said that she was depressed. Your self-care is everything. Your mental state is everything. So we're out here fighting these fights, but the truth is, we all fighting on the inside. So I just wanted to say that, and I just wanted to congratulate you guys again, because that was very, very brave, and I wish I had these opportunities as a high school student to get up and speak my piece. So I definitely want to let you guys know that I admire you and to keep on doing a great job.
So many things to comment on again, but starting with depression. I just had my blood work done. Vitamin D will cause depression. And we know that the president is furthering decreasing the nutritional value of our food. So this is something that we can all get into, is get into a community garden. You know, start growing in your windowsill. You know, every little bit counts. The other thing is, for direct action, there's going to be 10 days of action from Earth Day to Labor Day, uniting the environment and labor. You know, and the school system, that definitely is included into this. I hope people will come out and be involved in the marches and you know, help bring your own posters. Online, we've got listed several art builds that we're gonna do. Make your own posters, bring your own issue. In fact, you could get involved with the group and probably get your presentation involved during these 10 days. Thank you all for being here and doing this.
I just wanted to address anyone in this room who may think that speaking truth to power doesn't change things, because that's false. I used to be part of a group called the Better Bus Coalition. I was a founding member with my friend Camara, who is the president. The Bus Coalition is a rider advocacy group for bus riders in Hamilton County and Cincinnati. So they were started as a group to say, why is no one paying attention? Why are our buses breaking down? Why are there no benches and shelters at bus stops? That started 3 years ago. One of the first things we did was highlight the fact that Metro did not own one single bus bench at any bus stop in Hamilton County. If you saw a bus bench there that was one of those wooden and concrete ad benches, that's the ad company. They put it there with no permission, and they were not maintaining them. The first thing we did was bring attention to that fact. We went to council meetings, we went to community council meetings, we went to bus riders. I work downtown. I was running into people downtown on 4th Street and they're coming in and out of the Chamber of Commerce, as politicians do. We stopped them and we said, why is this not happening? 3 years later, after all of this pressure, after years of nothing happening on this front, I now work for Metro, which is why I'm no longer part of the Bus Coalition. We just signed a contract to put out 400 metal benches in the city of Cincinnati and Hamilton County. 200 fully enclosed shelters with the works, lighting, seating, a safe environment, concrete pad, don't have to stand in the mud anymore. And it took a while, but now it's happening, and they are cutting the check. The board is going to vote on it this month. So you should be able to see those coming soon. So it does get better, and it happened because a bunch of 20-somethings were bothering the heck out of the people in charge. So keep doing it.
So thanks everyone who organized the event. Thanks for these high school students for coming out and being involved on a Saturday. That's always impressive. It'd be hard pressed to get me to do that when I was a kid. But anyways, I actually agree with what the last speaker was saying. It's, you know, the city council, the mayor, like, they are directly responsible for this, and they're trying to make it sound like it's like they're not. They're trying to make it sound really complicated. Like, what's a TIF? Oh well, if you don't have 10 hours to read about it, maybe you don't understand it. But we just really need to call them out and be like, hey, Sittenfeld, hey Jeff Pastor, hey Croning. His name's Cranley, I call him Croning. You are personally, taking money. Like, it's not that complicated. You're taking money from kids. You're taking money from the schools. And they tried to sell the library, and there was a pressure campaign. They didn't do that. So I think we could do that. There's city council meetings and other public events where we can go and we just bug them, call them out on every opportunity we can where they're speaking in public, because that's our right as citizens. Another thought I have also is, like, when I lived in Washington State, the school, or the legislature was actually sued because education is a paramount duty according to the Constitution of the state. And so I was wondering if here in Cincinnati or in Hamilton County, if there's any kind of legal angle to take against them for taking this money that was meant to be for to go to the public schools. I'm not a lawyer, but it's something I'm curious about.
I am a lawyer. I will answer that question. The Supreme Court of Ohio back in the 90s in 3 or 4 cases basically said the way we fund public education in Ohio is unconstitutional. And unfortunately, we don't have the backbone of legislators to actually address that, unfortunately. But my name is Pete McLinden. I'm from the Cincinnati AFL-CIO. And I think what we have is a lot of short-sightedness of our elected leaders. They spend more time dealing with the symptoms instead of really curing the illness itself. But my question is for the panel. When we talk about these problems we have, affordable housing, the lack of adequate public education funding, what other cities, we're not the only city that deals with these kind of issues, what other examples or what other cities would you point to or other states that say, okay, we should be more like that regarding when it comes to affordable housing, when it comes to public education, and these kind of issues?
Pete, I'm just gonna say, I'd like to let people, thank you, that was great. I'd like to let people do the comment, because this is the comment part, and there's some people who really want to share some information, but that's a great segue to say that a lot of us are working on a coalition called Communities Act Now, or CAN, and we are about to launch a website that has a ton of exactly what you asked. Where is equitable development, affordable housing policy working? What are examples that we can replicate in Cincinnati? So that will be coming out soon. Thank you for the question, but let's let more people share their information.
Hi everybody, I'm Chelsea. I'm with Socialist Alternative. We're in the back. Yeah, I want to second what Pete said. Our city leaders have made it pretty clear that they don't really have a plan for an equitable community. Back in 2002, they got rid of our democratic, our city planning department, which is theoretically democratic. It is run through the city. They decided to get rid of that and create the completely undemocratic, corporate-controlled 3CDC, which has given us a lot of parking garages and which gets a lot of public money that they then get to use completely how they want. And they've given us the now private park, Washington Park, which is paid for with public funds, but then they get to completely control. And by the way, you don't get to practice your First Amendment rights there because it's a private park. The city has also put forth different ideas about, maybe as an emergency winter homeless shelter, we should just use the lobby of the Hamilton County Courthouse. That doesn't seem like, so they're planning on just criminalizing homelessness even more than they already do. We really need to take as much of a multi-pronged approach as we can to these problems. First up is definitely putting money in that Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I think the fact that the city formed the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and then specifically didn't actually fund it shows exactly where their priorities are, shows exactly that they don't actually care about the people of Cincinnati. They only care about their corporate wealthy developer donors. So I've already got my shift to collect signatures for the petition. I definitely encourage more people to talk to Mona, get signed up to do that. But we have to remember that is a backwards looking thing, right? We are going to be making up for all of the affordable housing that we have lost. And so now we need to also be looking forward to, okay, how can we ensure that in the future we still have affordable housing for people? And that is why we, as a group, are calling for rent control in the city. We can't keep allowing the city to get more and more expensive so that only the top, so that, we become like San Francisco, where the living wage in San Francisco is $100,000 a year. That is insane, and I don't want Cincinnati to look like that. So yeah, now is the time to definitely be getting involved, and there's nothing too little that you can be doing. So yeah, glad everyone's here.
Hi, I would like to say something about the West End. For the past 3 years, and I want to say 2 years ago, the West End community has brought together a softball team, a baseball team, a football team, a cheerleading team, and that community tries to help and make sure rent stays low. They put money into trying to make these things happen in the West End, trying to make the West End stay the West End and not this expensive, all of a sudden, rich people just going around. So they tried, there's something in the community that also is trying to make it stay their community. Every year we have fundraisers, we have car washes to save up money to help us to get the West End to stay the same. And it's very much, even though I don't like being in the sun, it's very much inspirational to see the fact that this community actually knows what's going on around them, and they're trying to change to make it the same, or try to at least make it better, but make sure their rent stays the same. Like, instead of having 5, 6 abandoned buildings, turn those abandoned buildings into community centers for these kids, because kids around downtown and need something to do in the summer instead of just getting in trouble with the law enforcement. And we do not need more juvenile prisons either.
So I'm glad more than one person in this room has brought up the idea of accountability in City Hall, because we have more than one, more than two, more than 3 different city councilmen have on the record said displacement isn't real. Communities that are being overdeveloped, displacement isn't happening, these things aren't happening to any one community, no one's rent's going too high. People, I'm a victim of displacement. I know many of you in the room are victims of displacement. I know many of you are struggling to pay rent right now. It is unacceptable currently that we have too many people on City Council that flat out believe that displacement isn't real, that believe that corporations like 3CDC are people that should be running our public planning for that. It's insane. We need to stop letting City Council run these ideas that displacement isn't happening. Rising rent's not a problem. The fact that we live in food deserts all around Cincinnati isn't an issue. The fact that we have people sleeping on the streets is something that should just be happening. That's unacceptable in the city right now.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to be wrapping up in 5 more minutes, so we want to make sure that we get these last 3 people. And then once we disperse, we're going to need your help with stacking the chairs. So if we can just have everybody's hands in helping doing that, that would be awesome.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Brown. I'm president of the League of Women Voters, and I just wanted to flag for you, there were some great ideas of long-term action and maybe some really deep things that we could do. But you know, the one thing you can do now in the way of action is vote. You can vote today at the Board of Election. It's open till 4 o'clock today, and there's an election in a couple weeks. We have sample ballots back there, and we talked about transportation. I mean, there is an issue on the ballot to fund the bus system and to improve the bus system, but people have to vote for it. They have to get out and vote for it. If you don't want to identify yourself in the primary as a Democrat or Republican, you don't like partisan politics, go and ask for an issues-only ballot and vote on the transportation levy. There's a lot of information back at our table, and I encourage you before you go to take a look at it.
Thank you so much.
Hey everybody, my name is Ben Luton. I'm a student activist from the University of Cincinnati, just up the road. But for the past year or so, I've been part of a project called the Activist Coalition. We've created a website called boldlybankrupt.com. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. But this is a project that was actually kind of kickstarted by Andrew Watts over there and has been worked on with a number of people in this room, from Socialist Alternative to the Tenants Union. But how this applies specifically to this issue is that these themes of a lack of accountability and these neoliberal policies that kind of prioritize capital over building communities are present not just at the city level, but at so many different systems that we encounter every day. The University of Cincinnati, you might have heard, has a project called The Next Lives Here. This is something, it's full of a whole lot of vague and empty promises, but one of the tenets of that is community outreach. Unfortunately, what we've seen from this community outreach is the same that's kind of driving this displacement and this overdevelopment in Cincinnati. It's giving money to large corporations to develop unaffordable housing for students that can't afford them, for community members that can't afford them. So what I would like to leave you all with is this idea that you can participate and demand change at all levels in your life, and that you can also demand change from UC. We are all community members, and just because you're not students or faculty or alumni doesn't mean that this $50,000 student, block, this force, this huge concentration of capital and people and intelligence. We have a responsibility to give back to the community, and you as the community have a responsibility to demand what you need to see from UC. So don't be afraid to make noise just at City Council. Come to Clifton, come yell at our Board of Trustees just like what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for coming. This was one of the best public forums that I have been witness to in this city. And I want to really thank the students. I love what you said. I want to talk to you because we need to make sure that for this rally for public education, if we could even get some students, some teachers to go as a field trip. We have 3 buses. They will be free. And we need to go to the State House and make demands. One, we need to make demands that they reform the report cards. They are unjust the way they are currently. 79% is considered an F as a graduation rate. It does not make sense. They just make up numbers, and they are doing it to harm students in urban areas. And they are doing it so that they can privatize education, not just in Cincinnati, not just across the state, but across the whole country. We have one of the worst voucher laws in the country. We have some of the worst, and they are trying right now, currently, they're going to be voting in the beginning of April. So it's really important that we make a strong stand. There will be supporters of public education from across the whole state there. We want tens of thousands of people there to show up and say no more expansion without accountability of vouchers. We make promises to children in this state to say we'll give you a voucher so you can go to a private or parochial school. It is not enough money to really do it, but some families, if you have the means, you can take those vouchers and it gives you the discount. But we are making false promises. I have seen report card scores that are never ever shared publicly of many of these schools who are 100% voucher, 100% non-Catholic students. They are given a promise of a better education, but there's no accountability and they're not told anything. As a teacher, I would have kids their families were excited. Oh my gosh, I got a voucher, we're so excited, we're going to a private school. They came back 2 years later and they had lower reading scores, lower math scores, and the public schools are then held accountable. They don't keep any of this, they don't accept all students. There's no elected school board who is running them. You don't know how the money's being spent. At least we have the democracy within public education. If you don't like what's going on, you can vote out the people in charge. You can go to school board meetings, you can speak up. They can't stop anyone from doing that. And so I just encourage everyone, if you can't go, to try to send someone else. We are going to have buses. You can go to the CEJC Facebook page, and there is a tiny URL right on the page. That's where you register to get on the bus to go for free. We will have snacks going up and pizza coming back. And so it should be a good day. wear red for ed, and we want to make sure that Ohio has improved schools because since the last 10 years, public schools in Ohio have dropped dramatically, and we want that to reverse it. So thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is Julie Sellers. She is the president of CFT, so thank you for speaking. Thank you everyone for coming out. We're definitely going to be having more of these forums, and we're hoping that it expands and get bigger and bigger, so be on the lookout for that. Thank you.